Hi guys, my name's Dale and welcome to D&DGaming. If this is your first time visiting our channel, we provide honest, in-depth game reviews on a wide range of PC games and review them from the perspective of two experienced gamers. We highly recommend you click that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our up and coming game reviews. If you find you like this review, remember to give it a thumbs up by hitting that like button. That said, in for review this time around is action-adventure first-person shooter Wolfenstein The New Order. Reviewing the game with me is my brother Dav.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Wolfenstein The New Order is an action-adventure first-person shooter video game developed by Machine Games and published by Bethesda Softworks. It was released in 2014 for Windows PC, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and Xbox One. The game is set in an alternative 1960s Europe where the Nazis won the Second World War. The story follows war veteran William B.J. Blazkowicz and his efforts to stop the Nazis from ruling the world. The New Order is the seventh main entry game in the Wolfenstein series. So Dale, what are your first impressions?
Well, I've been looking forward to playing this for years and I just never found the time for it. I knew it'd be a solid first-person shooter just from seeing general reviews for it, and it certainly didn't disappoint.
Well, I kind of knew what this was going to be before going into it, even though I haven't played a Wolfenstein game since Return to Castle Wolfenstein in 2001. There was no introduction needed for this. I'd seen trailer footage of this when it came out in 2014, so I kind of knew what to expect. So what were your general thoughts following your playthrough?
I have to say I really did enjoy this one, and it was certainly a relief from several of the crap games we've reviewed recently. It throws you straight into the action and doesn't let up throughout the whole opening sequence, which really sets the scene for what's to come. I was a little concerned about the amount of cutscenes which are noticeable early on and how it suddenly wrestles the controls away from you in the middle of an action sequence. What the damn hell are you doing? But overall, this didn't really detract from the game for me too much. It certainly has an interesting story and a unique take on what could have happened if the Nazis had won World War II.
Yeah, it was kind of what I expected really, so certainly no surprises. Kind of a typical FPS game by today's standards, not necessarily a bad thing though. I did enjoy the game on the whole, but there are some issues and some things I think could have been better, and I'll come on to those shortly.
So in terms of graphic options, there's a good range of graphic options available, although I thought it was a shame you can't turn off the depth of field. Apparently the only way to do this is through modifying system files, and I couldn't be bothered to go through the hassle of doing that. I wouldn't have thought it was that hard to program an off button into the game, but I'm assuming on the hardware at the time it may have just been too taxing on the graphics card perhaps. It is a shame because I do find depth of field to be really quite distracting at times, and I'll come on to that again later.
Yeah, I haven't really got much to add to that. There is a number of graphics settings, as Dale's pointed out, and good range to get it running just about right on your system. So in terms of graphics and graphics performance, we'll put our PC specs up on screen as usual, but the game ran well on my PC with no noticeable graphical issues for me. I ran it with everything set on high and it ran really smoothly. The graphics themselves are okay, I guess. I guess they're not bad for an 8-year-old game, but there are a lot of noticeable flat-looking, low-resolution textures.
Yeah, in terms of my thoughts here, I thought there were excellent cinematics, real AAA quality that sets a high bar from the start. The graphics themselves are decent, especially for a game from 2014, and I'm sure they looked very good at the time. But at today's standards, there are quite a few low quality textures, as Dav mentioned, when you look closely, and even when I put everything on Ultra, it really didn't change this much. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the depth of field was really annoying for me, and you can see from this clip just how noticeable it is. I initially ran everything on high and then later turned mostly everything to ultra just to see how it would run, and it actually mostly ran fine. Again, I got a fairly modern system, so it's to be expected. There were a few frame drops in cutscenes and when there was a lot going on, but pretty good overall. I did turn off a few of the options such as haze flare, as I'm not keen on some post-processing effects such as that. I thought there was great design and variety of the character models, enemies and weapons, so yeah, overall I thought the graphics were great.
So in terms of player controls, I found the controls were okay generally, but nothing that great really. Key binding is available from the controls menu, which is handy. The controls are quite typical for an FPS game. We're sad to move around, left control to crouch, mouse buttons to shoot, mouse wheel or number keys to cycle through the weapons, inventory, that kind of stuff. Nothing new really. One annoying thing I did find with the controls when climbing the ladder was that if you use the mouse to look left or right, you fall off the ladder, which is fucking ridiculous. If you have a bunch of enemies shooting at you and you're climbing a ladder, you can't look around to see where they are because you fall off the ladder if you do. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if it was an intention with the game, but either way, it's stupid in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have much to add here. Standard FPS type controls. I use mouse and keyboard as usual, so yeah, nothing really further to note from me.
So in terms of game story and game mechanics, The New Order is set in an alternative 1960s where Nazi Germany won the Second World War by deploying advanced technological capabilities. You play as Captain William B.J. Blazkowicz, a US Special Forces operative. With the story beginning in July 1946, Blazkowicz forms part of a Special Forces raid on a Nazi fortress run by evil SS officer known as Death's Head. Subsequently caught and taken to a human experimentation lab, Blazkowicz escapes but is badly injured in the process. He's admitted to a Polish psychiatric asylum in a catatonic state and is unaware that the Nazis go on to win the Second World War. The years passing by, and in the 1960s the Nazis order the asylum to be shut down and execute those who resist. Blazkowicz, coming around for his catatonic state, escapes along with a nurse, Anya Oliwa. Heading to Anya's grandparents, Blazkowicz is then informed that the Nazis won the war and that since then they have taken over Allied countries with their superior technology, capturing and crushing any resistance that rises against them. Blazkowicz, with the help of others, then sets about releasing the resistance members from the Nazi control and becomes part of the movement to stop the Nazis taking over the world.
In terms of game mechanics, it's a pretty typical FPS, moving through leveled environments such as a prison, submarine, and a laboratory amongst others. You shoot and blast your way through, taking out waves of enemies. There's a stealth mechanic to the game, and whilst the enemies are unaware of you, you can creep around and take down enemies silently with a knife to avoid detection. Alternatively, you can go in all guns blazing. It's kind of left up to you as to how you want to approach it. Some areas have enemy officers that will radio for backup if they detect you, so at least trying to stealth your way in can be the better option in some cases.
So in terms of UI, the UI is very simple, just two icons at the bottom centre of the screen, one for health and one for armour, and three icons left of the screen, one for throwing knife, one for ammo, and one for grenade quantities.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, pretty standard FPS type UI, with basic information but everything you need. So in terms of sound and music, well, I thought there was great voice acting from everyone.
Cat's in the bag. Bag's in the river.
The foreign sounding voice actors came across as genuine and not someone trying to fake an accent like in some games.
Sergey would never leave such a sweet ass hanging.
Okay, that's a relief then.
And I particularly like the Scottish guy, Fergus. He was great fun.
There's a nuclear cannon on this boat. Correction. Our nuclear cannon.
I thought they were good weapon sounds as well, very solid sounding and a good variety to go with the range of different weapons available. There's background music that builds up in certain places, like in fight scenes as you'd expect, but it blended in well enough and certainly didn't stand out in a bad way for me. In fact, a few times I barely noticed the music was playing, I was so immersed in it.
Yeah, so for me on sound and music, yeah, as Dale's pointed out, the music very much in the background. It's not always there and comes and goes with the game scenes. And yeah, it's quite fitting for the game, not too intrusive or too understated. The game sounds are very good, very atmospheric. The weapon sounds are quite good as well. I didn't think they were anything special, but not too bad either.
So in terms of bugs and glitches, well, I had a minor glitch where an enemy glitched into the ceiling. This actually happened a couple of times, but I only caught a clip of one of them. I can't really mark it down for this, as it was actually pretty funny. I also had a much more serious ladder glitch though, where I literally got stuck down in a room and couldn't get out at all. I tried for about 5 minutes, then just gave up and restarted from the previous checkpoint. The ladder in this particular section was the only way in and out. There was no doorway you could go through. Unfortunately, the previous checkpoint I had to start from was like 10 minutes back in the game, which was a bit shit. I had a look online and it seems I'm not the only one, as the ladders seem to be quite glitchy in places. And, well, as Dav mentioned as well, there's issues with the view and falling off of them. And so, yeah, strange kind of error in the mechanics there.
I think other than the ladder issue, I didn't actually come across any, so yeah, it wasn't too bad for me.
So to sum up, things I liked about the game, well, I really enjoyed the story and just got completely immersed in the game and its environments. The Wolfenstein series is quite a unique take on this alternate timeline approach, and they really fleshed it out here with steampunk type elements at times and a real futuristic approach to how the Nazis could have dominated the world if they'd won World War II. Also a good variety of enemy types, from genetically engineered dogs to man-made machines, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses. There's a great variety of interesting weapons, which also allows for different approaches. For example, as we touched on, you can use knives, you have silencers for a more stealth approach, or you can just go in all guns blazing. I tended to mix it up between the two depending on the particular level and how I felt really. There's also a range of different upgrades for most of the weapons, from silencers as I mentioned, to scopes, and a range of made up type additions to the weapons as you progress, and which are actually useful and not just for show. I thought it was great level design. I found a few sections a little frustrating, but overall very good design, and a variety of levels which leads you to various parts of the world and even the moon at one point. It was good stealth gameplay, and I found myself regularly taking this approach, but it was just fun to silently take out enemies by throwing knives at them or taking them out with the silencer. I feel that there's high replayability, as there are actually 2 storylines available as it splits at a certain point in the game, which I won't spoil. I would definitely play it again and try out the other storyline to see how different it is. Again, I won't say any spoilers, but there is an Easter egg in the game which was great, and yeah, I don't want to spoil it anymore, but you almost definitely come across it.
Yeah, so in terms of things I liked about the game, I enjoyed the nostalgia of playing a Wolfenstein game again. It certainly felt like one. It didn't feel like it strayed too far from its roots, which is good for a 7th game in the series. There's a good variety of missions in this with a good range of environments, and environments were very convincing and well designed too. I like the mix of all guns blazing and stealth action. I tended to find I'd start with stealth at the beginning of a section, but then usually get noticed and end up with all guns blazing. But it was good to have the option of either style of gameplay that you want. I had a few good undetected stealth sections. I liked the range of enemy types, some of which were complete bastards to kill. I did like the narrative of the game, which kind of combined stopping the Nazis from taking over the world, along with Blazkowicz's own personal revenge against Death's Head for previous events. I thought this worked really well.
So in terms of things I didn't like, well, I did think that AI could be a bit dumb at times. The enemies popping up in the same place from cover each time, and no ability to try and flank you or anything like that. And their pathfinding seemed a bit off at times as well. I guess this could change on a higher difficulty maybe. I played on a kind of medium difficulty in the end, but yeah, they may get slightly better with the higher difficulties. There are a lot of cinematic type cutscenes where it takes control away from you completely.
Right on time, Captain. Walk in the park, was it?
No.
Okay, well, I'll just get to work.
It didn't bother me too much, as it was usually to progress the story or introduce new characters, but there was definitely a few places they could have removed these. Slightly poor graphics textures which were noticeable on some items, and in some of the environments were a bit of a letdown for me, and in particular the depth of field and the fact that you couldn't turn that off.
Yeah, so in terms of things I didn't like about the game, I thought the boss fights were just really annoying. Other than the final one, which is kind of understanding, the others just felt a little bit too contrived and just set up and put in for the sake of it. It didn't really need them, and I think it would have been far better without them, really. I thought there were far too many cutscenes that take away control from you as a player. They could have done with a lot less, giving more control to the player really. There's quite big difficulty swings at points in the game. I'd be easily clearing some areas with no issue, and then suddenly it would seem to ramp up the difficulty out of nowhere and I'd die multiple times trying certain sections. Although I like the range of enemies, they really are bullet sponges in this, sometimes to the point of stupidity. So in terms of missed opportunities, Dale, do you think there's any in this?
Well, not really many here, but I would say the ability to move bodies would have added to the stealth mechanics. There's times where you kind of feel that you want to move them and hide them behind, cover or something like that in case someone sees them, and you can't do that in this. But luckily, as it is, the enemies don't really seem to notice those bodies unless they're right near them anyway. So it wasn't a major issue.
So in terms of scores, what do you think on this one?
I really enjoyed my playthrough of this. I do like to play a solid FPS every now and again, and this was absolutely up there with some of the best of them for me. Story was gripping and the gameplay was great. It wasn't perfect, but there were actually very few negatives for me, and so I'm going to give it a pretty high 8.5 out of 10.
On the whole, I really did enjoy the game. The mix of enemy type and gameplay mechanics for taking them down in a well laid out and designed environment made the game very gripping and very intense at times. However, the sheer number of cutscenes, large difficulty swings and bullet sponge enemies did bring the score down for me. And for me, it settled at 7.5 out of 10. Well guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. Hit that bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, and we'll see you in the next one.
Die like vermin. I will hunt you down. At the end of the earth I will find you. Your skin shod, your fats rendered, your kind exterminated. At the end I will feed your flesh to the furnace.